Hello everyone, it's Friday once again, so you know what that means. It's time for Artisan Weekly. It's edition 79. It's been another really nice week. We've had some lovely sunshine, which of course really helps for, to help you develop. We know that vitamin D is really good for us. But there's also been some really good posts out there. We've seen some minor releases from the Laravel framework with some lovely new things in there. So let's get started with this week's top 10. So in first place, we've got a post here by Jefferson on the Deedless blog. So it's his technical journey of building a PHP debugger from scratch. So, you might be using something like Ray or Xdebug. And if you've wondered the kind of work that goes into developing this kind of, this kind of thing, Jefferson kind of goes through what he's done here. So it's quite interesting. Like I said, the steps he had to go through, the things that he had to learn for this. So yeah, if you're interested in this kind of read, then go over and give it a read. Next up, then we've got this post with Daryl. It's an interesting one. So it's validating array inputs in Laravel without I'm to use n+1. Now you might have these requests sometimes that have, as it shows you, kind of, these arrays, and his example is for a shopping cart, and you might have things like checking that the product in the array exists in the database. Now, if you use a typical Laravel form request and you do it this way, there's going to be a lot of n+1s here because it's going to loop through each item in the array and do an exists check. So obviously that's going to be a lot of queries if you've got 100 items. So Daryl shows two examples here of how to better that form request, make it better. So first of all, he uses the after method on the form request, but then he also uses prepare for validation, and gets all the IDs in one go and then passes them in. So it's quite a nice way of doing that, and it will save you first of all on your queries, but also the speed. Next up then, we've got a post here by Wendell. So he's talking about the ADR pattern in Laravel. Now, it's not a pattern that I've used, but again, it's always good to learn about these new patterns and kind of get an understanding, because you never know, you might come across a code base, you might be given a code base as a developer that's using this pattern. So having an understanding of that beforehand is a really good idea, and it's also going to help you develop as a software developer. So yeah, he goes into great detail here about the pattern. So if it's something you're interested in, head over to his blog and give that post a read. And then next up, we've got another post here by Brent. So this is talks about dependency hygiene. And this is a really interesting post because, how many times have we, as developers, worked on projects and we've had to use polyfills because versions of PHP don't have things, or there's lots of scenarios. So he spent some time going through a bunch of repositories to find polyfills that are not necessarily needed anymore in those repositories, and he put PRs in to remove them. One of the big ones he says here was this Paragoni sodium compact plugin, package, and it was quite interesting. To see, like, he scanned 1,500 projects and 229 of them had unnecessary dependencies. Now, this post in itself was quite interesting, but there was a number of comments on this post that actually made him put another follow-up up for this. So yeah, there's another follow-up post to this. So if you finish reading this one, read the follow-up as well. Check out the comments to see what some people said about this. Next up then, we've got this post on the Redberry website by Nini. So they're going through the Laravel AI SDK here, and they use it to develop a dual agent system. Now, Redberry have also got their own Laravel AI package that they've been developing for a long time, and it's nice to see that they're actually going to embrace the first party package and use that within theirs, which should hopefully make things a lot easier for developers to use. But again, if you are looking at learning the AI SDK, you know how to play with it yet, another really good post here with examples on how to do that, and a actual system that they're building with it, so you can kind of follow along and build the same thing. Next up again, so Harris, his third episode now in his new AI Laravel AI SDK series that he's doing, and in this one he goes about the agent that he's created, that the customers can talk to. He is starting to implement more features in it. So he is putting in things that allow the agent to talk to the database. So right now, prior to this, if a customer had, asked, "Where's my order number 256?" the agent would have actually kind of hallucinated and given some fake information back because it didn't have access to the database. In this tutorial, he goes about showing you how you can set this up, how you can get it to work, restricting certain things so it can only do a subset of things, meaning that your agent can't like destroy the database and things like that. So again, if you've been following along on this, check out episode 3. There's going to be things you're going to learn from that. Next up then, we've got James Second over on the Vonage blog. And in this one, again, it's kind of AI related. We're talking about how not only, how, tools like PHP Stan we use to make sure that your code is correct, but actually is it readable? Like the important thing with these LLMs is that they're able to read your code and understand it, because you're going to get better results then. So Jim is going through using this package called PHP Readalizer, which is a new package by Chris Miller, who is part of the PHP architect team. He used to work at Gem24, but now he's there. And yeah, this plugin talks about using rules to kind of go through your code, much like PHP Stan, and kind of tell you, okay, this isn't as readable. It doesn't care that it's correct. It's about readability. So yeah, there's a bunch of rules Chris has created that you can then use, via the config, and run these through and hopefully help make your code more readable. Now, Jim's example here is a good one. He talks about the exceptions. So he runs it through one of the Vonage SDKs, and there's a number of exception classes that don't contain the word exception in the name. And it basically, trying to say all these things help LLMs get better at what they're doing. So, they have to infer from the folder structure that's an exception, but if you put that in the name, it's going to understand that a lot easier. So there's going to be less work. So less work, less tokens, all these kind of things. So yeah, it's another package out there that you could start to use that will help make your code more readable. And next up then, we've got a post here by Hafiz. So this is a post comparing Scotty and Laravel Envoy. Now Scotty's a package that the Spatsy team recently released. We talked about that previously. And yeah, he's kind of done a comparison on the two. So if you're already using Laravel Envoy locally to deploy your applications, it might be time that you give Scotty a look. If you've not done that, it's a great post to do to kind of get an insight into it. And then we've got another post here now by Ivan. This is one of these age-old debates. Do you make your models fillable? Do you unguard them? And he's kind of come in with the title "Fillable has no context." So he goes into detail here about why using the fillable array isn't a great idea, because in different contexts things might be different, or you might not realize at this route what is actually fillable. I have to go back to the model each time. There's all these things that come into it. So he kind of talks through the usual approach, and how you lose visibility, and no context in the current flow and things like that. So then he talks about using DTOs, which we love at Gem24. We use them in all our projects, and this does help, because you've got a single class you can go back to. Here's the context, here it is. So yeah, if you're one of these people who love to kind of argue about this kind of thing, give this post a read. And then lastly, we've got a post here by Mark. So this is WebSockets versus server-sent events. So you're thinking about making your application real time, but you're not too sure which way to go. So he kind of goes through in detail here the two different approaches you could use. WebSockets, and server-side events. So if you're at that point now with your application where you're ready to start to add that real-time reactivity in, a great post to read. So yeah, that's it for this week. Hopefully there was something good there that you enjoyed reading. And if you did, please do reach out to those authors. Let them know, on Twitter or on LinkedIn or however, you might be able to get in contact with them. Drop them a little message and say, really appreciate the work you did into that post. And of course, if you've got blog posts that you'd like me to read and perhaps feature on next week's edition, do send them across, and I'll get them in. We've got a newsletter now, so head over to artisanweekly.com and sign up, and you'll get this in your email inbox every Friday morning. And yeah, if you've enjoyed it, follow me over on LinkedIn and Twitter. And thanks again. See you next week.